Hey everyone, welcome back to Simple Programmer YouTube podcast, whatever medium you're listening on. This is actually a totally new format. Well, it's sort of an interview, but we're really just going to have a discussion here. I've been getting a lot of requests about quitting, not necessarily quitting your job, but going from developer to entrepreneur or developer to business owner. So I've got Marcus here. Marcus has, I've done an interview with him before about how he left his job, but we're just really going to talk about a lot of the mindset today that is required to do this, because 90% of it is mindset, and we're just going to have a conversation and see if we can help you out if you're thinking about going from developer to entrepreneur or developer to business owner. Hopefully this conversation will help you. So welcome, Marcus.
Hey John, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good. How's the entrepreneurial life treating you these days?
It's kind of funny. I just posted this tragic post this Monday about how I was going to step away from Simple Programmer for a while. And I sort of am. I'm not doing blog posts for a while, but I was just feeling burnt out and just, I didn't want to do this anymore. And I'm feeling great this week. I think taking the pressure off amazingly, just like I got this super energy burst and I started doing all this kind of stuff. And so now I think I'm operating in a totally different mode, where I was operating like a machine before. Now I'm doing stuff because I want to do it, and letting my heart guide me a little bit more than I did, in the startup phase, when you have to work so hard to get things going.
It sounds like it almost became a job. Oh my gosh. But like a job you had to work, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it totally did. It totally did.
And I know when I had my company, like when I was first an entrepreneur, I walked around like, oh, I'm working in a coffee shop. I don't have a job. I'm an entrepreneur. Fast forward about 3 years, I was like, I have a job. And I hate my boss because he's me. And you can really do that to yourself, can't you?
Oh yeah, I totally did, because I'm a person who creates rules for myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I created so many strict rules. I had my schedule printed out, like I have to do this thing, and I think you have to do that when you first start out, right?
Yeah,
because you got it. It takes a lot of hard work to push the ball up the hill, but at some point you have to realize when the ball is up the hill. You're pushing down super fast while it's rolling down. It only makes you tired. It makes you trip over your own feet.
That's a great analogy. The ball. Okay, but let's talk about when you left your job, because I kind of talked a little bit about my story. I know nothing. What kind of work did you do when you worked for someone else?
I've mostly been a software developer, working on different technologies, a lot in the C# ASP.NET space. So I was recently working for a company where the developers worked from home. That was my last official job.
Okay.
And so our whole team was remote, but I did web development and some mobile development for them. So yeah.
And I'm just curious, did you do anything on the side? Did you have the entrepreneur mindset at that time? Or were you like, this is my job. I come in every day. I do my job. I want to do a good job. I want to get a promotion, sort of the typical thing that maybe your audience is thinking about?
So I had a few false starts, right? So earlier in my career, I had basically tried to go into business for myself. I was wanted to do that, but I didn't know how. For at one point I thought bidding on contracts, that's how you,
right.
As a government contract. And I had no idea, never actually did anything with that. Then I had this crazy idea. I wanted a shortcut and join my friend in his business and, kind of ride that. And I didn't have the right mindset. I wasn't ready to work, and that didn't work. I was just looking for a shortcut. I tried to do gumball machines and all kinds of I did all these things, but probably about maybe 2 or 3 years before I quit my job, that's about when I started Simple Programmer, the blog, just as a blog. Mm-hmm. And I started doing, one of the key turning points for me was I created an Android and iOS app to help people run faster, right? To be able to set their pace.
Physically running.
Exactly. Yep. Okay. Yeah. And I completed it. See, I was the kind of person who didn't complete projects, right? I have this, all these things I would start up, come up with these ideas. And that was my first, like, I did this, I completed it. And that was the key, because that's what I became, what I call as a finisher. I did like a blog post about this concept, but essentially, my mindset shifted to becoming a finisher. And
So you did this while you were still employed, right?
Right. I was still employed, and I didn't think I was going to quit my job from making an iOS or Android app. I thought maybe I could make 10 or 15 or 20 of these. Maybe I could do this as a full-time thing. And I was still doing my blog on the side. And then I started doing some Pluralsight courses, and I signed up for my first Pluralsight course and finished it and finished the next one. And so getting that, so I was doing that on the side. And I mean, for a long time, I went into this work mode where it's like for 2 years, I think I was doing Pluralsight courses, and I was basically working like 70, 80 hours a week, working my full-time regular job. I'd come home. My schedule was like, I'd go to the gym in the morning, and then I'd come home or finish my full-time work. I'd eat dinner with the family, spend a couple hours a night playing with my daughter and hanging out. And then about 7 p.m. or 8 p.m., I'd be working on creating Pluralsight courses until like midnight or 1 every single night. And then on weekends, just pretty much working all day. And I did this for like 2 years to buy my freedom, essentially. I can't even imagine doing it again. But that was eventually I got to the point where I was able to, make the jump. I'm super conservative, so I could have made the jump earlier, but I waited until my side income was triple my regular income.
Well, and it sounds like at some point even when you started doing the Android thing, and this is what I found, was you started getting this mindset that the job you had now was not going to be the place you were probably going to work forever. And,
yes.
And you started looking beyond that. And you weren't sure what was out there. So the Android app was like, hey, maybe this will work out. Maybe I'll even finish it. For me, it was doing some service work on the side. Like I picked up a job building a website for a local hairdressing company. I mean, it was really like, $15 for a whole website, right? Like it was pretty high tech. But those sorts of things made me start thinking like, maybe I won't retire from here. Maybe I need to think a little more broadly. And it sounds like you did the same thing. And once you saw that you could do it, it kind of gave you this spark, this light at the end of the tunnel that, at least for me, I always thought I was going to be at the company I was at for a very long time. So I never looked beyond that. I always just stayed in the moment. Like I have to invest myself here. I want to get promoted. I don't want to piss anybody off.
Right.
I want to suck up to the bosses. And I'm just all about doing everything I can for right here.
Yeah, that's key. I think that's a good point. I think one of the things, and this is, I always tell developers, like, stop working more than 40-hour weeks for someone else.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Just work the 40. Because I was like, I remember working for HP at one point. I was like, oh, I'm going to be an HP person, and I'm going to climb up the ladder, and I'm busting my butt, staying till midnight, 1 a.m, working on these things. No one even cared. Like,
no one cared, right? You were salary, and they just, in fact, what I found is like the more you did that, the more maybe my boss would be like, I mean, he was a great guy, but he'd be like, well, I clearly don't have to worry about Marcus leaving because he's so scared. He comes in every Saturday, even though there's really no deadlines, right? He's here just humping it all the time, And it comes from a good place. Like, I don't want to knock people because there's a lot of developers that are listening to this. They're like, oh, I do that. And I understand. You're a good person. You're a hard worker. You have good ethics, work ethic. That's why you do it. You're just misdirecting your energies because I would use the catchphrase, you're making someone else rich. You're building someone else's empire. That's essentially what you're doing. Like, you need to have the same work ethic. Just make sure that you work your 40 hours for your employer, and then you change this mindset, and then you work that extra 10 or 20 hours you're going to work for yourself. That's right. You might not even see it, might be far off, but man, that builds up. That extra 10 or 20 hours you start working for yourself every week, in a couple of years you're going to build something substantial. That's the way the ticket to freedom is, and you're absolutely right. It starts with that mindset. Well, and I was even getting paid overtime at times. And so that was my excuse, was like, oh, well, I'm not working for free. I'm getting overtime. But the reality is I was valuing the money way more than the time.
Yes.
And I had a totally wrong I think you're exactly right. Like, I hear this excuse all the time of like, well, you did it, but I don't have time. I don't have time. I buy a class and I never take it. I buy a book and I never read it. I just don't have time to do it. You must have a lot more time than I do. And it's like, that's total crap. I have 24 hours every day. You have 24 hours. And people are working a lot more than they need to for good reason, but for a misdirected reason, I think. Don't you think if somebody's actually interested enough to have listened this far into our discussion, they must want to leave their job and do something different at some point in their life?
I think so. I was surprised to find out how many, like when I did a poll to my audience and it's like entrepreneurship was number one. And I was like, really? I thought that most people want to know how to advance in their careers. And I think everyone has that secret dream of someday working for themselves. And a lot of people believe that they can't do it.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's the key. And like you said, the big excuse is that they don't have enough time. And it's funny. I actually found this statistic, and I wrote a whole chapter in my book about and soft skills about it. But this idea that it's that the average like American watches 40 hours of television a week.
No, 40 hours?
Yeah. So now I realize not everyone does, but even if you're only half of that, right? And hey, and sports count. Because right, watching professional play. So like, that's if that's a lot of hours. Like if you I don't watch any TV. Like I'll be honest, and I watch like 2 or 3 movies a year. I saw The Martian, it was great, but
I'm seeing it tonight. I'm excited about it.
Oh, it's good. It's good.
I'm good.
Have you read the book?
No, I'm just coming cold to it.
Okay, well, once you watch the movie, then you're going to want to read the book.
Okay.
But anyway, I haven't been watching TV for 3 or 4 years. That's where my time comes from. Is right. I still have time. I have time to work out, hit the gym, do all the stuff that I've been doing. It's because I'm not wasting 3 or 4 hours a night watching TV.
My wife likes to watch TV. I like to, but when I was in that phase of trying to figure out how I moved from my full-time job to something else, I remember every night I was sitting on the couch and she's watching TV and I'm working on the laptop. So we were together in the same room, but I'm completely not plugged in. I'm like, I'm doing this and this is, and she would, sometimes it was frustrating, right? Sometimes you realize your spouse does give up something. And so painting them a picture that it's worth the investment, I think that's important too. But the excuse that you don't have enough time I don't think it's ever true.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm saying, oh, you can't ever, I like to play video games or I'm going to go play poker tonight. Right. It's not like you can't ever do something that you enjoy, but you have to realize that it's a trade-off, that there's a sacrifice. And when you're starting up, when you're working a full-time job, right, and you're trying to do something on the side, you might have to make some hard sacrifices to get that time temporarily until you can, earn the time back. And if the biggest thing is, I think, with wasting time is also, like I always say, time is never wasted if you do what you intend.
Ooh.
So if you intend to watch TV because that's what you want to do, right? You're like, I want an hour of entertainment. I'm going to watch TV. Not wasted. You got an hour of entertainment. But if you just flip on the TV out of habit and you should be working on something else and you're just mindlessly, you didn't make the choice, right? It just happened. That's wasted time. So that's the key is like, when you sit down at the computer, what do you intend to do? If you do what you intended, if it was to watch TV or watch YouTube videos, that's okay, as long as it's what you intended. But if it's not what you intended, then you wasted the time.
The intentional life. Absolutely. So when you started working and taking, like you must at some point have said, I'm going to do my 40 hours. I'm going to honor my employee commitment, but the rest of the time is mine. Right.
Right.
Did you fear that your employer would notice, like, oh, John's not in here on Saturdays, he's not giving his all, or things like that?
So I think I made that shift in mindset a while back, like that I would just do I don't want to say the bare minimum, because I always tried to be better than everyone else. That's or at least, better than the lowest, right? Like I always tried to do a good job, the best job that I could do within the time limit. So I felt like as long as I was being valuable, that it wouldn't matter. And also because I was doing stuff on the side, I was increasing my skills, increasing my value. At some point, it became, I'm not afraid. I mean, and there's two factors to this. I think one of them is that you are so, you have a blog, you have something, you've got skills that you're not afraid, you could get a job tomorrow. Right. When you have that in your pocket, you feel confident. And also when you got, when you got $6,000 in the bank, or you got whatever it is, 3 months of salary in the bank, right? I think those two factors, if you get those two things, then you're not afraid of anything. Who cares if you get fired? Because you could get another job and you got money, right? It's when people, what do they call it? When you're in a squeeze, you're in a squeeze if you are afraid because you can't get another job because you're afraid it might take you months,
right?
Or you don't have enough money. Then you have to compromise integrity. You have to you put in situations where you're being penalized, and I call that a squeeze.
I think that's where I live in a small town in the desert of Oregon, and I think because of geography, my mindset was I was in a squeeze all the time. And even when I was making okay money, I always thought, if this doesn't pan out, I'm going to have to pick my family up and move. And I don't want to do that. So I'd better knuckle down and just keep on working and be the good employee. And I had to work two and a half years of nights and weekends and early mornings where I didn't watch TV, and I progressively started putting 20 or 30 hours a week into my side business. All while keeping the day job going. And I noticed this weird office space like mind shift that happened after about 6 months of like, okay, I can do this other thing. Yeah. And I can be kind of successful. And I see that maybe where I'm at isn't going to be where I'm going to be forever. Yep. And all of a sudden my time became my most valuable asset, even more valuable than money. And I started getting a little bit irritated with people at work when they would waste my time. It was kind of the first thing I noticed. Like before that, I was like, oh, you waste my time. It all pays the same. Time is like nothing. So I'll just sit in this meeting. I'll just do stupid things, whatever you want. But after a while, I became like, you know what? My time actually is meaningful. I could be doing something really important with it, like investing it in myself. So I think I'll push back professionally and gently. When my time is looking like at work, it's going to be wasted.
Yeah, that's another big shift, I think, in the mindset. I think you've got that right on, which is the understanding, the counting of time. I often tell developers to start tracking their time before they ever think about going out on their own, so they can realize just how much time they're wasting and that how they're prioritizing their time. Because when you're getting paid a full-time job, you're clocking in and you're not too concerned. You're there, whether you chat all day about Star Wars or actually do some real work, you get paid the same.
It pays the same. That's right. And you probably even feel better, right? Because you're not as exhausted.
Exactly. So, yeah. But as an entrepreneur, you're not getting paid unless you've set something up, done the hard work ahead of time, and you're getting paid, dividends from work that you've previously done. When you're not working, you're not getting paid. When you're watching a YouTube video, when you're having a chat with someone that's not productive, you're getting zero. And you feel that. So you make the mindset shift first because you can't, it's not an off or on, right? You can't just say, okay, well, when I'm at my regular job, I don't care about time, but when I'm on my own, then I do. No, you got to start with, it's got to be a whole person. You got to really shift your mindset in general.
I think it'll bleed over. And I know, like you said about the skills, the entrepreneur, I remember going to my boss and he would say, oh, well, can you do this? And I would think, yeah, I just did that on the side. I made this for this client, or because I was doing, client work, which was like, I would go take on part-time contracts to build websites for people. Kind of lame at the time, but hey, it's what I could do in the evenings and weekends, either on a fixed bid or an hourly basis, that would help me to practice to do something to leave my job. At the time, honestly, I never thought I'd leave my job. I thought it was just a little side income, just a nice little cute thing, and it seemed kind of fun. And it sounds like that's kind of what you thought with your Android app, is you didn't intend right up front to leave your job. You were just going to try and do this and kind of see what happened.
Right. Exactly. I'd be a lot more intentional now. I think,
Oh, of course.
I run, I have a podcast, Entre Programmers, where, four of us developer entrepreneurs discuss, have our weekly mastermind live, and record it. And one of the guys there, Josh, he actually worked for the same employer that I did before I quit. And my good advice for him was, because he was planning on leaving his job, and it's like, mark the date on the calendar. And
that you're going to leave, like, plan on it?
Yes, he had a year. It was like, I think it was a year and a few weeks on the calendar, right? And he had it marked. And he wrote a little iPhone app or a countdown timer, and every day it would tick down. And he wrote his 2 weeks notice, and he had that ready to send.
Wow.
And I was like, that will get you, that's the way to do it, because that, from everything that I've learned about it, that's going to get you motivated. Then it's a reality, and you're working towards that, and you have to get there. I think that's a good way to make this seem more real, to get you motivated, to make you do the things you need to do, because that day is coming.
I love that. It's so true. You've got to make it seem real, even when it's not, right?
Yes.
It's not yet real. I remember I went to my boss about 2.5 years before I quit, and I said, I'm going to start doing things on the side, and I'm probably not going to be here forever. And that was a really scary discussion to have, because what my employee sheep brain was afraid of was, he would say, if you're not 100% loyal, get out of my office, you're fired, right?
Right.
Of course, he didn't say that. No boss would say that if you're talking to a reasonably good worker. He said, oh, okay, well, thank you for letting me know. I appreciate the respect you've got, not to hide anything. And, I wish you luck, and we'll see what happens. But just kind of, it was a part of making it my real reality, was putting out there my intention in a more public way.
Yeah. That's when it starts to become real, right? It's like when you have actually, it changes from a dream to a goal. I think that's, you gotta do that. When you write it down, when you say it, when you commit to it, that's when it changes from that. And dreams are always a part of the goal at the end of the rainbow is a dream.
Right.
You can keep going, but you're never gonna. It's always just a little bit further out.
Yeah.
But a goal is when you're running a race, and you see the finish line, and it's far off in the distance, but every step you take, you're getting closer. You're going to reach that, and I think that's another mindset thing. You have to make that shift, otherwise it's never going to happen.
I think that's great. Did you feel guilty for leaving your employer? You had a good job. They were nice people. Maybe you enjoyed it. Maybe they'd been good to you, or they paid you well. Did you feel any strong sense of loyalty towards them that kind of almost made you feel guilty when that went away?
Oh yeah, definitely. I part of the reason why I stayed so long was probably because of that. If I honestly look back from a financial and security perspective, I was fine, but I felt so bad because I liked the people I was working with. I liked the job. I was having a good time there. And I just felt bad to abandon them and to not, I don't know, you get that mindset of being, even with my mindset shift, I still felt like a company man to some degree.
Right.
In fact, I stayed on, like I gave 2 weeks notice, and they're like, oh, could you stay for 4? And I did.
Of course, right?
There's no reason why I should do that, but
I mean, if that makes it easier, what's 2 weeks? You've been working 2 years, right? What's 2 more weeks? What do you say to people? I felt a lot of guilt too. And it's only in realizing I almost overstayed my welcome because I felt so bad about kind of taking the plunge. And it wasn't as much about risk and money as it was about like just feeling like, well, won't my friends think I'm a jerk? Won't the boss be disappointed? I mean, they've given me so much, right?
Right.
I just felt really bad about the whole thing.
Yeah, no, I definitely can echo that. Like, and you sort of wonder, like, what does it really matter what this person, even if they hate you, what they're not, but what does it matter what their opinion of you is? You're not even going to be dealing business with them again, or probably even interacting with them ever again in your life, maybe, I think that's, the other thing about that too is you have to realize, like, it helped me a lot to think about the flip side. This is business, right?
Yeah.
Businesses exist to make money. We have friends. Yeah, we have a good time. that's secondary.
Yeah.
And whatever company you're working for, I don't care, who they are. If they can't make payroll, someone's going to get cut. Like
you're out. They might be your best friend,
right?
but they're going to put their turkey on the dinner table before yours because that's how this works.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? They're going to get fed before you get fed, and the owner's going to protect himself. And so you're right. That's just business, and it's not being a jerk.
Yeah.
I remember I even have worked in places that were terrible places to work, where all the employees felt like they were suffering, and that suffering like built such a camaraderie that then anybody was afraid to leave. Like, oh, you're leaving this horrible place? Well, fine, just abandon. And you use the word abandon. Just abandon us then. And
right.
I was afraid they'd hate me. And I think I had to like change my loyalties. I had to become more loyal to what I wanted and to what my family needed than to what my employer wanted. And I felt really selfish at the time doing that.
Right. And I think, the shift, the way I would describe the shift is it's a shift from loyalty to person or even identity, right? Your own identity to principles, right? My loyalties are in principles. I know how I want to work and how I want to live my life and what things, and they're all based on principles which never change.
Right.
Whereas your identity from one phase of your life to another changes. And if you're loyal to that identity, you get stuck. That's getting stuck in a rut. So you gotta, you gotta pick the thing. I think actually, a good, I'm just remembering this now. It's not totally original, my idea, but Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He talks about like dysfunction, centeredness. This is how he describes it. And he says that like certain people are centered on their spouses, they're centered on their friends, and it affects their decision. And he comes down to say, spoiler for the book, but the proper centeredness is principles, because that's unchanging.
I was certainly centered on my work. I really worked for a company where lots of people around me had been there 25 years, and I thought I was going to be one of them. Yeah. I thought I was dropped in this amazing company where I was like, I'm going to get to be a lifer, just like my dad was a lifer at his company. And so I completely embraced the idea of not just casually company man, but like I was all in to be the company man. It was a really hard shift to make. And I guess as I look back on it, I would encourage, if people are sitting there listening to this feeling like, man, I would feel like a jerk if I left. Think about that idea that the truth of the relationship is they pay you to perform work for a certain amount of time per week.
Right.
Like that is the core. So one of my principles has become to try and look for the truth in things, not just paint them like I want them to be. So if you want to imagine that your employer would be loyal to you even if they couldn't afford to pay you, that's not the truth of the relationship. The truth of the relationship is it's a business deal.
Exactly. Another one. I love this line of thinking is people think if I leave, everything is going to fall apart.
That is a fear, right?
No one can do what I'm doing. The truth.
Right. I'm indispensable.
Yeah. The truth of the situation is the company will hire someone else and they'll figure it out. Yes, I know you've been maintaining that VB6 app that no one else knows how to maintain, but they'll figure it out. Like you're not leaving them crippled. Like life will go on. Like we sort of, when you look at the truth of it, that never have I ever seen. I mean, have you ever been in a company where someone left and everything just fell apart because that guy, no one else could maintain this app or do this thing? Maybe rarely it happens, but
no. And the core part of that lie is that wanting to feel so important.
Yes.
Right? It's almost arrogance, right? If I leave, who will do this thing that no one else who's here could possibly do, right? And yet the reality is the truth is it's not your problem. It's not your job. It's actually your manager's job to make sure that every system has somebody who can maintain it, right? That's not your job as the maintainer to be shackled to it for the rest of your life.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And it's that's important, that feeling of importance. And the other thing to think about too is the mind shift, the mindset shift once you have left. you won't care about these concerns anymore because you won't be working for that company. It's like my wife asked me last night, she's like, do you want to be cremated or buried? And I was like, I don't care. I don't care.
My wife has asked me that too. And
At that point, it won't be my concern anymore.
Exactly. I say, what would you be more comfortable with? Because you will be concerned with it and I will be gone.
Exactly.
Yep.
So,
exactly.
so you just have to fast forward in your mind and say, okay, if I quit my job 2 weeks from now, will I even care about if I answered this email or if I did this thing or if this system that I used to maintain is functioning? It doesn't matter to you. I mean, you don't want to I don't mean to be like heartless, but it really won't matter to you.
And the truth is your employer will find someone else. There's a lot of people who want to do your job. That's just the truth of it. They're not ready to take the plunge. They want to have whatever VB6 application. That's what they love, is those VB6 applications. Make space for them, get out of the way and go do something you want to do without worry.
So let's talk a little bit about baby steps, because I think this is one.
Yes.
Right? Everyone's like, I think there's this hard, how do you actually get there? Because this is something I never had any idea. Now I could probably definitely coach someone on how to become an entrepreneur. But when you're working for someone else and then you're like, I want to eventually be independent or on my own. How do you what in your experience have you seen as some baby steps that people could take to get them on this road where they know that the path will take them there? I think a lot of people, they don't know where to start, so they don't do anything.
Yeah, that's true. For me, what I did is I took on side work, and I called it at the time. Yep. I took on side work because it did a couple of things. One, it showed me that I could go get other work, even in the middle of my little town where nobody lives, right? That there was other kinds of work I could do. And by side work, this was like software development projects just by the hour for people who I had met who needed some work done, right? Yep. So it was oftentimes there weren't really tight time frames, right? And I could sort of work at my own pace. They were just happy to have somebody. And I didn't worry that much about how much I earned. I didn't set the hourly rate super high. I tried to disconnect the work from the money at the beginning, because what I wanted to do was see, could I go out and get work as an independent person versus my only choice that I'd always chosen was to work for somebody else.
Right. That makes perfect sense. And I think that's one of the things that I'll point out that you said there was you divorced the idea of the money from the work, which is I think so important, because people sometimes think, oh, I need so much money to live. I'm making, or they get the golden handcuffs. They're like, oh, well, I'm making $100,000 a year as a senior software engineer. How could I ever? I need to make that much money. And the answer is no, you don't.
Right.
First of all, you don't need that much. You might have to make $40,000 or $50,000 a year as an entrepreneur starting out.
Right.
And second of all, you can't be thinking about that from the beginning, because it's too much pressure on yourself to say, I need to make $4,000 or $5,000 a month.
Oh yeah.
You start off and you celebrate the win. I remember the first day I sold something for $5 on the internet. I was like, yes, this is awesome.
Exactly. I'll never forget when a client I sat down with, I pitched a whole website for $1,500. They wrote me a check for $750 on the spot. I will never forget the feeling of having someone else pay me to do something. And it was like this light bulb, like, oh, holy cow, I've been so afraid of telling myself that I could actually do this, but I think it's real. The other thing, though, it did, John, for me, is I needed the pressure of an obligation.
Yeah.
I needed to set myself up in a position where there was something on the line. Right then it was $750, not a lot of money, but my word and my honor and my, ethics to deliver something, that's what was on the line.
Exactly.
And when I did that, that's when I would start. I noticed I'll get up at 4 a.m. to make good on that promise. I'll stay up till midnight. And yeah, I put like 300 hours into this $1,500 website. So you can do the math about how much I was making per hour there, right?
Yeah.
But once I had done it and I finished it, I was like, I wonder if okay, I did it once. Let's go do that again. Let's do it again after that. And they were little jobs, but what they did is they got me in that habit to show me I could do it. And I really did track my time. I think that's a very key part of it as well.
Yeah, yeah, and doing those little steps, I think, is when you do that, then you start to realize, yes, this is possible. Yes, I can do this, and then it's not this huge overwhelming task. I think, and this is baby steps, right? A lot of developers today, there's this whole Facebook, and there's even some television program about startups in Silicon Valley, or maybe I think that's what it's called. But
yeah.
I haven't seen it yet, but
I haven't either. You don't watch much TV.
Yeah,
I'm too cheap to pay for Showtime or whatever.
But there's this whole glamorous, even Y Combinator, right? And startup accelerators and stuff. And it's like, oh, I'm going to create this startup and I'm going to become rich and all this. And don't start there.
Don't start there. Don't go
make a workbook for $5 and sell it. If you're trying to do a product thing, or could you just consult for, or do some small project?
Can you do something for $30 an hour? I realize that's peanuts, right?
Yeah.
It's peanuts. People would be stupid not to pay you $30 an hour, right? You're not going to stay there. And that's the important thing, is to know that where you start isn't where you're going to end. You probably could have never predicted being where you're at now 5 years ago.
No. Oh, no.
No, I couldn't either, right? And even when my company shut down, so I started my own company, we had 11 people, it was great, blah, blah, blah. I shut down 18 months ago. What's the next thing I did? I started giving away coaching services completely for free, divorced of money, to see if it was a valuable thing that I could do.
Right.
All of a sudden, I'm doing 22 hours a week of regularly scheduled free coaching work. And I was like, oh, maybe there's a business here. But I had to actually kind of reset my brain, start over for free again. We're very cheap, separating money and effort again.
Exactly. Yeah. So many people spend so much time, and you got to see if it works, right? It's like, and you got to get experience. You're going to fail. You have to learn how to. I didn't know anything about copywriting or marketing and stuff. And so, I mean, if my first entrepreneurial effort was some software application that I spent 1.5 years building, and then I try and launch this thing and no one buys it, and I've quit my job, I'm screwed. But if it's a $3 Android app, right, and I've felt what it's like to make some money off the internet, or if it's a blog and selling a small thing on there, then you do a bigger challenge. The same thing if you're doing the freelancing route. You do one client for, like you said, maybe $30 an hour, and then hey, now you grab someone for $60 an hour. Now
that's right. Every time you sign a new client, right, I would just increase the rate by like 10 to 20%. You just kind of walk up. The thing I found, especially when it comes to service work, was, imagine I agreed to do this website of $1,500 for 300 hours. No one would do that. No sane person, right? You'd never knowingly take that on. And that means, and if I just quit my job and said, this is what I'm going to do, after about 20 hours, I would have been back knocking on my client's door saying, I need more money. And they'd say, well, you told me it wasn't going to, well, I can't honor my estimate. I can't honor the word I gave you. I need something more. And what I realized was, when you're small and you have the full-time job, it's the perfect time to make all the mistakes. It's the perfect time to be completely ethical without any other constraint, because you might imagine having 11 people and doing $120,000 a month in payroll. When things go sideways, you can get a little nervous, and all of a sudden ethics get blurry, right? Like, oh, should I charge that client more? Do I need to go ask for more money? I don't know if that makes any sense, but if you get your practices down while you're small and you can afford to make the mistakes, that's the time to do it.
Yeah, again, it comes down to that squeeze, right? If you're in a squeeze, if you don't have a job and you got to pay for rent and stuff, I'm not going to judge you when you make some less than moral decisions. I mean, there's a gray line there, right? But you're having to make them because you're in a squeeze. So don't be in the squeeze. That's where you feel bad and you make bad decisions, and you make decisions that hurt you long term instead of making decisions that help you long term. And that's a real danger of the squeeze.
Is like going to those payday loan places, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, okay. So, but you told me earlier you're playing poker tonight, right?
Yeah.
And what was the phrase you used when you play poker that you kind of gave the analogy to when you were in a company and you're always worried you're going to lose your job. So you're always kind of hypersensitive about it.
Scared money, right?
Scared
So
money.
it's
That's what
when
it
you're
was.
playing above your limit, when you're afraid, when you can't push it all in, and it makes you afraid. You play scared. You have scared money at the table. You can't play optimally. You can't perform optimally. It's the same thing in work. If you are afraid that you're going to lose your job, if you're afraid that you're not going to, that you have to get this client or you have to do this thing, you're not going to project confidence. You're not going to you're going to play scared. You're going to make in poker, you might fold too often when you could pull off a bluff because that's strategically, I'd say that's the right move to make. You're going to make the bad moves because you're not going to have the confidence. And that's true in so many areas of life.
Man, I had that scared money attitude for so long. Even when I wasn't afraid I was going to lose my job, I was afraid I wouldn't get the promotion. I was afraid I wouldn't move up as quickly as I wanted to or get where I wanted to go in the company. And that really pressured me, squeezed me into being a yes man, into agreeing to time frames or things that were completely unreasonable, into keeping my mouth shut became the safe move, right? Rather than being aggressive and playing well. And I just love that movie Office Space because it's such a picture of a guy who goes from scared money to he has this brain thing happen, right?
Exactly, you're right.
He's not scared of anything and he's showing up late and blowing up. Now, I'm not saying we should all do this, but of course the consultants look at him and say, what do they say? You're a top straight shooter with upper management written all over you. Yeah. And he gets a promotion. And, I actually think if people did these things, that's when I got promoted the fastest. I went from 3 or 4 levels down from the VP. 4 months later, I was working for the VP because I just wasn't scared money anymore. And people could see it. And all of a sudden, it's like you enter into this club of people who aren't scared. And those are usually the people running the company.
Exactly. Because anyone who runs a business, right, as an entrepreneurial mindset, knows that it's all about risk taking.
Right.
And a good worker, potentially, to just get some work done, is someone who doesn't take risks, just do the job.
Right.
But a good leader is someone who's willing to take calculated risk. And that's why those people, even though you're like, man, how did this idiot get promoted? He doesn't have any of the technical skills. He doesn't know any of this stuff. It's because he's a calculated risk taker, not a total reckless, but not afraid to take the moves, to be bold. Because in entrepreneurship, you have to be bold. You realize that, sometimes you work on a thing for 3 months and you might get paid $0 or you might make $100,000. And if you can't make that choice, you're never going to be able to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah. So start, if people are listening, start small, right? Yep. Take on one contract, think about one little info product, start writing. I think, John, you're right on the money. Getting comfortable writing and blogging is a huge way to look to, and you don't know what's going to happen. You literally think that, oh, here's my plan to get to the goal. You should do that. Follow that plan. My belief is that plan will almost never happen exactly as you think. And that's good because we typically don't dream big enough and we think too small. Yep. And I never would have imagined I could have lived the last 7 years not being an employee. I just never would have imagined that I was doing what I'm doing today.
Yeah. Yeah. Good points. Good summary.
Yeah. So start small, but start, right?
Yes.
Do something, put yourself under at least for me, I needed the obligation of a contract of saying, I will deliver this to you. And then I did it. And that to me really lit me up and got me up at 4 a.m. So.
And I'll add one more point to it, which is trust the process, right?
Yeah.
I remember learning to juggle. Seemed impossible. Throw 3 balls up in the air, nothing happens. But if you know that other people have learned to juggle, then what you realize is that if you try this 1,000 times, you have a 99% success rate, even though it seems like you're not making any progress. So if you just trust the process, just say, hey, other people have become entrepreneurs. Other people have quit their jobs. Other people have done this. If I start small and I keep making steps, even if I don't feel like I'm learning anything, even if I don't feel like I'm making progress, even if I feel like things aren't working out, in a year, I will have made progress. In 2 years. It might take some time, but if you're on the path, even if you're taking baby steps, you will go the direction you're trying to get. Your brain is smarter than you.
That's right.
We're built to do this. human beings learn things, whether they want to or not. You will learn.
And I remember last time we chatted, you said there were two things that you always encourage people to do, two mindsets: perseverance
and consistency.
Consistency, right? Was that it? Did I get it right?
That's exactly right. You got
yep.
a good,
and I've remembered that. Yep. Because I'm trying to write a book right now, and I'm like, okay, I just got to keep remembering, just keep working on it.
Yep.
Don't stop. If I give up, that's failure. But I can sit in front of the keyboard and not write as long as I'm doing my committed amount of time per day towards that intentionally. So
awesome. So we should probably wrap up here, but I do want to, you've taken the time to talk to my audience. So I want to give you a few minutes to just talk about where people can find you on the web, what you're doing, and and anything else that you want to talk about or promote.
Yeah, you can find me at marcusblankenship.com. If you go to /list on my homepage, you can join my mailing list where I write about leadership kinds of things, especially leading software development teams, especially for people who, my book is actually going to be focused on people who are thinking about making the jump from developer to manager. I also coach people in the area of owning their own company, of making the leap. I would just love, if you want to email me at marcus@marcusblankenship.com, I'd love to hear your story of how you did it or what you're most afraid of about making the leap to entrepreneurship. Because I'll leave you with this, like if you're standing on the shore and John and I are in the water, we can tell you should come on in because the water's fine, right?
Right. Awesome. All right, Marcus, thanks a lot. This has been a pretty fun conversation.
All right. Take care.
All right. Take care.
Bye.